Shall we start? What do you think, guys?
Ooh.
Oh, I think
it's showtime.
we're meant to start.
Better get moving.
Okay, so thank you very much for taking the time from your hangover to be here. Hopefully the party last night was fun enough. You stayed up, not too late. I'm tired myself, but I didn't party too hard. Some of you may have seen me singing on the stage, Spice Girls. That wasn't the highest moment of my career, but we are here to discuss something more important. Most of the times, I help developers like you to create applications, and when they're first starting, the question that I get asked the most is, what framework do I use? Shall I use jQuery? Shall I use something else available out there? How do I know what's the best framework for what I have to do? And the answer most of the times is it depends, because if I don't know what you're working on, I'm probably not sure how to give you a proper advice, a professional advice. So hopefully after this session you guys will know how to choose the best framework. My personal approach is to just play with a framework for a couple of days and see how it goes, see what I can do. And if I like it, I'll probably continue using it. If I don't like it, or the framework doesn't do exactly what I wanted it to do, or what I wanted to achieve with my application, I will just move on and try another one. So we've got 4, if the clicker works, but it doesn't. 4 prominent speakers here, representing 4 different frameworks. I would like to start from my side, which is Tim Neal, BBY.js. Tim, would you like to just introduce yourself briefly?
Sure. So hi, I'm Tim. I enjoy long walks on the beach and sappy movies. But in my day job, I work at BlackBerry, lead up our product management group for tools and SDKs and APIs. And my alter ego is coding on BBUI, which is a UI framework that creates a BlackBerry 10 or even back onto BlackBerry 6 and 7 look and feel, where it brings the user experience of BlackBerry for a web framework, which is actually its roots are very similar to a jQuery mobile in that it's very DOM oriented, and then it's styled after the fact. Versus a really JavaScript-centric one. So that's what the toolkit is, and me.
Perfect. So, and right next to you, we've got Ralph Whitbeck. And unfortunately, this is not in order how they're set down, but here's Ralph. And Ralph, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Did you realize there's 5 of us? We could be as Spice Girls.
Oh, definitely. I know, Ginger Spice, look at that.
So, hello everybody, I'm Ralph Whitbeck. I work for a company called Append2. I am the modern web advocate for Append2's tools and services, which just means marketing and evangelism. I also am a member of the jQuery board for the jQuery Foundation, as well as the developer relations for the jQuery mobile team. So that's me.
Perfect, cool. So you guys probably are familiar with these 2 frameworks, but there is a 3rd framework that it used to be like only enterprise. Now a lot of people actually are using it for its speed, the performance. And we've got representing Saint Chad, Daniel Gallo here. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone, my name's Dan Gallo, as you just mentioned.
Sorry, introduce you.
So I'm a technical sales engineer for Sencha. Sencha produces EXTJS and CenterTouch, 2 JavaScript frameworks and a set of tools around that. Myself, I'm a technical sales engineer based in the UK, so I can help answer any technical queries, do evangelism type activities. So.
Cool, perfect. Thank you very much. And then we've got, last one is Jose Manrique Lopez. Did I say your name right?
Yes.
Kind of.
Perfectly.
And he's representing Lungo.js. Would you like to say something else about yourself?
Hello everybody, good morning. I try to be as fun as possible just because it's very early in the morning, and the CEO of TapCubo is a little startup in the north of Spain, Bilbao, and we have created our own framework just seeing what is outside in the market and say, oh, well, why not write around and let's see, and here we are.
Cool, perfect. So I'd like to start with you guys asking why should people use a framework? I'll direct the question to Tim if you want to start.
Yeah, so using a framework is really around finding something that can help you with some heavy lifting that you just don't want to code yourself. It can do a lot of really interesting things for you. Any of the different UI frameworks that are out there, they deal with the idiosyncrasies of the different screen sizes. They do a lot of the different responsive design for you. There's a lot of real great benefits for it. So a lot of it is being able to take advantage of a lot of hard work and bug fixes and things like that have been found from others instead of having to discover and work through them yourselves. I mean, there are lots of differences still between different browsers that are out there. Even when it comes to the almighty WebKit, across many different versions of Android, BlackBerry, iOS, there are idiosyncrasies between these different things, especially from a layout perspective and what's supported in what versions and not. And a lot of times the different frameworks will take care of those things for you so that you don't rack your head against the wall trying to figure them out.
So yeah, it makes your job easier, but is it true that it makes developers write better code? Would you say, Ralph?
Can you repeat that again?
If developers write better code with a framework, or
Oh,
depends?
yeah, it depends. I would think. I think they write consistent code, right? So if you take the jQuery mobile mindset, you're writing semantic HTML. You're writing code that's consistent across all platforms, and the framework itself is handling all the cross-browser deficiencies between them all. So I think the developer can worry about just writing the code that's needed for them to build a consistent UI that's cross-platform, and not having to worry about those things that Tim has been saying. So it helps them take that mindset of having to worry about all those cross-browser things and just worrying about the code that's needed for them at that point. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, guys, by the way, if you want to interact with us, since it's not many of you, just raise your hands. You can ask questions to the panelists here. Let's make it as fun as possible. If you want to ask some burning questions, there you go. Okay. Jose, you guys have written a new framework. Why did you write a new framework and you didn't reuse an old one, for example? Why didn't you do something like that, or create plugins, or?
Yes, it's just nice to this question. Thank you very much for it, because it explains a lot what we are here. When it was 2 years ago, we were just writing apps for mobile webs, and it was something, what are the frameworks that are in the market? And most of the frameworks were just full of fallbacks to support things like Symbian or all browsers or things like that. We said, okay, we are focused on HTML5. We want to write HTML5 apps. Why don't we write our framework just focus on making it speed, fast on these kind of browsers? So that's the reason we have written our own framework. Maybe if there were a framework in the market ready for that was small, efficiency enough, you just learn from that and use it.
Okay. What about you, Daniel? Why did you guys come up with the Sencha concept, and what made you think our framework could save people's hours of coding?
Sure. Yeah, so with Sencha Touch for mobile and tablet devices, one of the big advantages, I would say, is having a full application framework in terms of a MVC application pattern, so you can make use of separating your logic out into models, views, controllers. This promotes best code practices, allows for easier code reuse across your project, and the framework has really matured over the past couple of years. And of course, with it being a framework, it renders absolutely fine across all the major platforms. But MVC would probably be one of the big advantages, I would say.
Okay, thank you very much. And so, moving from why people should use it, we should probably think about the different frameworks available out there and what makes them popular. So, Ralph, I would like to start with you. What do you think made jQuery popular?
Well, I think jQuery Mobile is popular because it's part of jQuery, right? jQuery is popular, and the promise of writing less and doing more is a big sell for jQuery. But I think what really makes jQuery mobile popular is the ease of writing jQuery mobile applications. All you're doing is writing semantic HTML. You don't need to worry about heavy JavaScript to get things to work. The framework handles a lot of the heavy lifting for you. You're just writing semantic HTML the way you would normally write your HTML, with some minor caveats of defining what those controls might be. And the framework will handle styling and making everything correct on all the multiple devices.
Thank you. Daniel, what would you think made Sencha popular?
Yeah, I suppose one of the main benefits is it's backed by a full commercial company. So Sencha today has about 150 employees, 90 of which have a full technical role, so whether that be core developer, technical support, training. So we've got all these guys working constantly on the framework, working to improve them, fix bugs, and you've got something to fall back on if there's any major problems, which is quite important for commercial projects. So if you have a big bug or a major situation, you want to be able to contact someone official for support, so you've got that buffer to fall back on.
Okay, so you mentioned something very interesting, which is the support that you can give. So sometimes that comes from the community, sometimes that comes from a company behind it. Tim, what would you think, in your case, support means for BBUI.js?
Well, I think for the BBUI.js, it's very much it's a community-driven side of things from a support perspective. Its toolkit is much different in its focus compared to, say, a Sencha or a jQuery mobile, right? It's a very niche specific, trying to get an exact BlackBerry kind of look and feel and into the different idiosyncrasies of that stuff. So it's not meant from that cross-platform portability and all the benefits that you get from the other frameworks. So in a lot of cases, the support that we're seeing there is really around, should I be doing it this way? Does this follow the BlackBerry user experience in what we're doing? So support there's gone, a lot of it's through GitHub for being able to do that. But I mean, again, it's really more of a community-driven than a company-backed. Obviously, we're there doing the vast majority of the coding, although we're getting crazy amounts of pull requests lately, which has been a lot of fun. So I think support there from us has been kind of from our DevRel side of things, from myself, but then also members that have been using the product itself. So it's not like a Sencha where you can call up with an actual commercial contract and say, this isn't working, someone hop on it and get it done, right? And it's one of the benefits that you get from an actual commercial contract of software. But then again, you've got very powerful communities and stuff behind things like jQuery, where you ask a question to Sir Google, and it comes back with 50,000 posts of someone that's run into the same issue, and you've got answers there on those different things as well. So there's all sorts of benefits between the two, and it's one of those things of what's the right pick and the right support model for you and your company and your business. And it really depends on, does your boss need to pick up the phone and yell at somebody? And literally, right, do I need a commercial contract on some kind of thing that's there? Because yelling into the internet, right, doesn't necessarily help you a whole lot. But then there's also companies that do provide support for things like jQuery and stuff like that, where you can get commercial contracts. So again, the question of it depends on what's the right one for you is that there are a lot of different options available, a lot of different business models and support models, and it's about finding the right one that fits what you need for your company.
Thanks. So Jose, in your case, what type of support are you giving?
Well, actually, we give, like Sencha business model, for example, we have the open source license, so the community itself is I think, is one of the best supports you could have. Even supported from your framework. When we released it, it was 1 year ago, the first time. The next day, there was a guy in Germany that has written the complete framework and was submitting bugs. So I think it was the best support you could have. Someone in Germany, lost in the north of Germany, just debugging the framework for you. But actually, we have support, commercial support. So there's a company behind, so you have someone to support you.
Yeah, I will say that some of the, well, the success, probably the biggest success of all these frameworks is that you get support, you could get support in different ways, especially the community. Because in your case, Tim, it started all as a project, your own project, and then it has blown out of proportion because people wanted to join in and wanted to use it, right?
Yeah.
So the community plays an important role here, which is make sure that the framework is used widely and is supported widely. If I find a weird bug, I'm pretty sure someone else outside there will have found the same and will have fixed it. So that's the importance of also.
Well, I think it's the interesting thing, right, is that you find that you start off something, every single one of these different pieces started off as something little, right, and you start getting, someone uses it and they tell a friend and they start using it and all of a sudden it starts going in and then as it matures and you get into the real commercial side of things, it gets harder and harder to make change as well as it goes along.
Yep. So there are different reasons why a developer will start using a framework. One could be because it's a beginner and wants to use something that it's easy to learn and it's manageable, especially if you are in a small company, a small medium company, where you want other people writing your code. So having to contribute your code, they need to understand what you wrote, right? But there are also advanced people want to use a framework because it's more scalable for their company. It's several reasons, but there are also people who want to write their own framework. So I would like to start with Jose and saying, why would people write their own framework?
What or why?
Why?
I think the first is just a challenge. Just learn from what's in the market. Most of the frameworks we are commenting here are just open source, so you can read it, and maybe the first reason is, okay, I have a need, and they are not fulfilling my need, so let's see how they are doing and how to improve it. So the first reason in our case was something like, we need something fast, writable, so let's start. Learn from what's in the market and reach that challenge.
So Ralph, should I write my own framework or should I use a community framework or something that is available out there?
I wouldn't write my own framework, so I don't know why anybody would want to write their own framework. Yeah, I fully support doing frameworks just because of all the heavy lifting that's done. But the mindset of people that are writing their own framework, they think they can write something smaller for just the things that they need, and I think that's why people go down that route of writing their own framework. And I think once they get down a certain amount down that path, they realize that they need all the other things that frameworks provide. And then they really realize that they've wasted a lot of time, or they continue down that path of building that framework that does everything that a framework already has. So, yeah, I to be honest, I wouldn't do it, and I applaud everybody that does write a framework because it is hard work, and especially to maintain these things. And just to answer your question about support, because I didn't get a chance to answer that. jQuery Mobile obviously is very community driven, as Tim said. There's companies out there that provide support as well. Pen2 is one of them. But the jQuery Mobile team does a great job of looking at bugs and issues and that kind of stuff. And I want to point out Jasper over there in the corner. He's our main bug triage guy for jQuery Mobile. And if you ever subscribe to the jQuery Mobile issue tracker list, you just see his name in your email box.
It's going to spam you with emails, isn't it?
So I just want to give him a shout out there.
Okay, cool. So Daniel, now something that could be seen a bit cheeky, but do you think that writing a new framework increments the fragmentation out there, so that there are more frameworks available, people have more choices, so they use less common frameworks? What do you think?
So as more and more frameworks become available...
As in, it does increase the fragmentation in the JavaScript?
I think it certainly makes it more difficult for developers to choose a framework. I agree with Ralph's comment that I would never write my own framework. In my previous job, I was a software developer, and we naively perhaps decided to do our own framework because we just wanted to have the exact functionality we required. But a year or two down the line, it's becoming unmanageable because there are different versions in each project, extensions are being made, and it's very difficult to manage all of that code. And when new developers come in, it's always a bit of a learning curve because it's a framework you've designed yourselves. There's no documentation out there to help them. It's just a massive cost overhead to maintain in your own framework in terms of time, money. So just don't do it.
So,
You
yeah,
have,
to continue on this note,
Sure.
why did you write your own framework, Tim?
Well, it's because I'm slightly insane. I think writing your own framework makes sense if you have a niche. If there's a niche that you're trying to fill, I think the biggest thing to understand if you go down that route is when to say no and when to say enough, and that you're not going to do more than what you set out and intended to do with it. And it's really tough as a framework starts to gain a little bit of popularity because everyone's going to want to add all the extra functionality that they found in other frameworks into the one that you're working on. So I think if you do go down that route, you need to know when to say no. And I say no a lot in our framework. It's like, no, that doesn't match this, that doesn't do this, I'm not getting into that. Because one of the trickiest things if you do start getting into writing your own framework is making it play well with others. And most frameworks make a lot of assumptions of they're the only one working in that area, and then you'll get someone that tries to mix in some jQuery in with it, that mixes in some model view controller framework that's out there, some scaffolding, something else, and then some build system, and then you got bugs saying it won't work with this stuff. I see that a lot with the framework that I work on because I've taken a much different approach of off-DOM manipulation, which most frameworks deal with everything being in the DOM already, and you get into clashes. So I think if you start your own framework, you need to be able to understand the box that you want to set it in. I think it's a fantastic learning experience. I think it's a great way to understand what's possible. But I think it's where you just really need to stay inside your limits and not try to solve all the world's problems if you go down that route.
Just say no, Tim.
I say no. I say no all the time. No, we're not adding that control, no.
Thanks a lot, Tim. Let's say that I've got a new application, app idea actually, and I'm thinking about developing a web language. Before I ask any of you what framework shall I use, which is probably the wrong question, the actual question should be, what do I have to consider before choosing a framework? What are the two things that you would say, in your opinion, are to consider before I make that decision? I want to start with Daniel.
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing would be try and work out exactly what you want from a framework in terms of exact functionality, UI components, perhaps ways of bringing in data. Perhaps the second one would be how much time would be involved in bringing that framework into one of your projects. So in terms of learning curve, how much time it could potentially save in the long run. So that's probably one of my two major things to consider. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Jose?
I think I quite agree with Daniel. And one of the first things is, what are you good at? I mean, if I am good writing JavaScript code, maybe I would go to Sencha, for example, to write my own application in pure JavaScript. If I am good just writing HTML, I will something like jQuery or Lungo or something like that to prototype your app. If you are good at designing, for example, maybe you can rely in other frameworks to put components, and then I can print and customize the application for my needs. So it's, what are you good at? Then I will choose my framework.
Yeah, so in your own opinion, a person should choose a framework because they're really good at doing something, and the framework should complement them.
That's right.
Right? Ralph?
Look at your market. What are you trying to target? Are you trying to target BlackBerry only? Are you trying to target BlackBerry, Android, iOS? All the different devices there. Do you need a cross-platform type of language that'll handle all that? That's the thing I would consider. And then I'd piggyback on what Jose said is, what are you comfortable in? If you're just starting out, do what you're comfortable in and get a prototype out there. See if that's going to work for you. You can build a simple prototype fairly quickly and see if it's going to work. You can experiment with different frameworks fairly quickly just by doing bare functionality and getting your idea down, and see if it's going to work and see what kind of framework is the right approach for you. So that's what I would do. I would just start writing little prototypes in all the different frameworks and see which one works best.
So by testing, you will come up with your own solution. Tim?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to what's already been said. I mean, I think the first things that you need to take a look in is scope and size, right? Like it's what are you trying to accomplish? How big of an application, how complicated is it going to be? Is it something that needs an MVC style model? Are you going to have a lot of coders working on it, all contributing at the same time? And how do you do that in a larger scale project and make it all work, right? So I think what you're trying to accomplish is kind of your first thing that you need to take a look at and seeing whether or not different frameworks fit to help you accomplish those goals. I think the second part, and to echo what other people are talking about, it's really what you're comfortable with, right? I think the best thing to do out there is don't get too much in a frame of mind of that, you know, this toolkit's the best and it's the only one that I ever use, right? I think it's around experimenting, taking a look what's out there, and you know, there's definitely different styles. You see them between the different frameworks, right? There's the primarily DOM-based ones of where you're doing your markup and it's doing that, or there's primarily a full JavaScript-based model, or then there's some that blend the two, but where you're comfortable and even taking a look at the members on your team and their skill levels and where they're comfortable will help you make that kind of decision of you know, a combination of that and your scope on what's going to really be the best fit.
Yeah, would you guys agree if I said if you have time to spare, try to test, experiment with frameworks? If you don't, and it's an important work project, just find what you're comfortable in and use that skill around that framework, or actually use that framework around your skill.
You said if you have time.
Time to spare.
Yeah, you need to make time. I think that's an important decision, right? Like you should make the time to explore, because if you go down the path of just picking the right one framework right off the bat and you get halfway down and it doesn't work for you, you've really wasted a lot of time getting to that point where you could have spent a little extra time up front experimenting and picking that right framework.
I think along those lines too is when you're looking to explore and do these different things, don't just look at frameworks. Look at the technology that's underneath them. Understand what the web can actually do and how JavaScript and DOM and what it means for layout recomputation, how these things happen. There is awesome technology underneath all of this stuff, and you know, JavaScript's a language that native developers hate because it's just crazy. You can just add an object and a property to another thing, and a function's an object. You guys are nuts, right? So it can do a lot of really, really interesting things, and I think having a really solid foundation in the basics of how everything works will help you understand too what those different frameworks are. And it's just constantly learning. Just keep feeding more and more information. And I think that helps you understand more about how the frameworks work and which one's going to be best for you.
Okay, thank you. When I was doing the research for this session, I found an interesting article that said that by using a framework, you actually affect application performance. Now, that's an argument, I will say, but what do you guys think about that? I would like to start with Tim.
So there are different pros and cons to different frameworks, and it depends on, you know, the amount of work to make every single platform perform great. In some cases, you have to make concessions, right, across multiple different operating systems, because you end up forking and having 6 different streams of code to deal with the idiosyncrasies of all the different browsers, and it becomes really, really, really tough to make everything work blazingly fast without having specific knowledge on each one and really having separate code paths. So you do get into a situation of where you do have to make concessions between different systems. If everything just worked all the same, that would be wonderful. But there's different philosophies behind different frameworks as well. around how things are styled and how things happen, especially from a UI perspective. And some of them have more impacts than others. So sometimes from a simplicity perspective, you do take a performance hit. But it doesn't mean that a complex framework is faster either. So that was one of the conscious things that I was looking at with BBUI is I knew all the idiosyncrasies inside of all of the BlackBerry web browsers. I knew which was fast, which wasn't fast. You know, for God's sake, don't use border radiuses on this operating system, or scrolling will come to a crawl, right? All these different kind of nuances in there. And the same thing for being able to do manipulation off DOM versus on DOM. And I do encourage everybody to read about, you get crazy performance improvements by doing most of your work off and minimizing the amount of recomputations and layouts on your screen. So it's, again, one of those things from an education and learning more and more about this stuff so that you can make more performing applications. So I think there are trade-offs, but again, it comes back down to what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Right. Ralph, in your work, it's quite challenging because you have to support different platforms, and all different platforms have got different browsers, they've got different engines, and they behave differently. So what would you say in this case?
Jasper, what do you think? Do you support Android most, trying to get performance out of that, or?
Sorry.
Okay, better?
Yes.
Sorry. So yes, with jQuery Mobile we support a lot of platforms, even desktop browsers. At some point that take a bit from the performance, but we also offer the download builder, like you can grab from the code what you need. And also in the code we have parts where commands like, if you don't support Internet Explorer, you don't need this, so you can get rid of it. But yes, supporting a lot of platforms can take a bit from your performance, that's true.
Absolutely. Daniel?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of framework, they can offer performance improvements and also degradation of speed. It depends how you use a framework. So one of the benefits of using a framework is you benefit from other developers' optimizations perhaps for a particular platform. So someone else has done the groundwork for you. But in some other respect as well, the developer that's using your framework needs to be aware the best way to use it. So for instance, you don't want to overnest components because that can decrease performance. And what Tim was saying, I agree with his comment about the amount of rendering you do on the screen constantly, because although mobile devices themselves are becoming more powerful, they're still less powerful compared to, say, a desktop machine, so you do still need to be careful exactly how much you're rendering on screen at once. So if there's hidden tabs, you don't want to perhaps render those when the application knows, just render those as and when they're required.
Jose, do you find the same challenge in supporting different browsers?
Actually, we have taken a more radical approach in terms of, for example, when we were writing our framework was something like browser will arrive to HTML5 and CSS3. It will arrive that time. So we started for that, not for what's in the past or what's nowadays. And it was something like, there were no BlackBerry in that time that supporting HTML5. They were starting and discussing. So 2 years later, BlackBerry browser is the best HTML5 browser in the market. You can launch a Lungo application there and it flies, compared with Android and iOS or whatever else operating system. So it's a matter of time that recommendation and standard from W3C will be implemented in the browsers. That has already happened in other markets.
Okay.
So it's more radical. Yes, let's see if we survive.
Yeah. So yeah, we hit really interesting point here because it takes time sometimes for a platform to become mature and for a framework to be able to support that platform really well. Right now, actually, you probably might have heard of the discussion, design mobile first. Because a web developer should first target a mobile environment, mobile applications, and then take that mobile application and bring it to the desktop for maximum compatibility and performance. If I look back probably 4 or 5 years, the approach was completely different. We will first write something on the desktop, and then you will try to remove lines of code and try to make it prettier to run on a mobile platform. Also now we have the build single page apps motto that most of the people are taking. What do you guys think about these? Designing for mobile first and building single page apps. Tim?
Yeah, I think there is a big swing. I think for the last few years, everyone's just been begging everybody, please don't cram your desktop website into a mobile. Please, please, for the love of God, don't, right? So I think there's definitely a certain set of skill to make things very good and performant on mobile devices, and thinking about your overhead and what you're pulling in, even just the images that you're pulling down and downloading. So yes, there is LTE, but you're not always on full stream bandwidth of what you're pulling down compared to your Ethernet connection or Wi-Fi connection at your desk. So I think there's a lot of really good practices that come back into the early days of trying to make your desktop perform well, right? So I think it's around making that efficient mobile application first. I think part of that kind of single page design feeds into that. It's part of that single page design is helping with, in a lot of cases, performance as well, to be able to make things work well on mobile. Page transitions and doing these different things of going out and reloading a URL in your browser is one of the most expensive things that you're ever going to do to try to move from state to state. And when you're especially in mobile, it's not about speed, it's about latency. And the requests that's coming from your browser to grab and fetch that, and the latency that's involved in around the network. And these things are very important, and this is why stuff like Ajax and workers and being able to do these things that work great in mobile will help along that lines for that single page design. Because a lot of people don't understand the way that mobile networks work and the way that they step. Yes, there's LTE speeds, but you don't get that on small. It bursts and it grows and it finally goes up to the top set of getting what you need off of large amounts of data when it pulls down. And this is stuff that we saw when we went 3G with BlackBerry devices. Everyone's like, well, why do my emails and stuff come in just as fast on 2G than they do 3G? It's, well, because we're sending small bursts of data. And it's only when you start pulling down larger chunks that it starts stepping you up and getting you those higher speeds. So these are all different things that you need to consider in mobile. And when you do those things, bringing that onto the desktop makes the desktop even run so much faster because it doesn't have as much of the hardware limitations.
Ralph, the framework you guys support comes from a desktop framework, jQuery, and then jQuery Mobile has been adapted to be very performant and give the maximum performance on a mobile device.
Sure.
Would you think that your framework is only around mobile first and single page apps, or what's your take?
Yeah, personally, we've been getting into, at Append2, when we develop for mobile first, we've been thinking about, especially for websites, responsive web design, right? You think about what it's going to look like at the mobile first and then expand out into desktop at your certain breakpoints and that kind of thing. I probably wouldn't use a framework like jQuery Mobile for a website. Doesn't mean you can't do that. I've got clients that want a mobile specific at certain breakpoints and lower, and then responsive after that, which doesn't make sense to me at all, but that's what they want. But if we're going to talk about like applications, right? Yeah. jQuery Mobile in the newest release is really focusing on responsive design in terms of how do you get a mobile application that you design for, this orientation to also work in this orientation, then to also work on a tablet as well, and how do you get those things to show up? You still need that responsive web sort of mentality to do those kinds of things. So we're trying to focus on that with tutorials and new components. In 1.3, we're coming out with a table grid, a grid and a table that's all responsively works to allow you to do an application in multiple breakpoints. And to your question about single-page apps, jQuery Mobile does really well with single-page apps. You can create one file and have multiple pages all defined in your page, and jQuery Mobile will handle swapping the pages in and out of the DOM and doing page transitions. And all you need to do is just link each page ID from your links to the ID of the page that you've defined further down the page. So that all gets handled through jQuery Mobile for a single-page app. So.
Yeah. Daniel, you are representing a framework, one of the frameworks like Sencha Touch there, is probably most famous for running really well on mobile devices, being really snappy and responsive. So did you guys take this approach, design around the mobile, and then if anything bigger comes along, like bigger tablets, then the framework will be tailored for that, or what's your approach?
Yeah, so when you're developing I think it is a good general principle to start designing for mobile, because it does force you, I think, to think much more simplistically. And I agree with both Tim and Rolf's comments that it makes you think about performance, not just from a desktop standpoint, but from a mobile standpoint, because you are sending things over a sort of slower or more restricted connection. And with our framework, when you do design an app, it automatically scales up based on the device you're using. So if it's a tablet, it will automatically scale up. So it's very responsive in that respect.
Jose, in your case, probably the framework is not a UI framework like it could be BBY.js or Sencha. It's more of a JavaScript framework. How would you define your framework?
Okay. Our framework completes all the stuff in terms of UI, because you can customize your UI just touching a CSS and customize it. Of course, it has a lot of components like widgets and things like that, but it's actually one of the things I usually say is, what's the best documentation for our framework? Just read the HTML5 spec. Yes, it's quite long, but it's the best one. You have semantic tags like nav, header, footer, that kind of thing, so that is visualization also. So how do you print it in the screen is one thing. How do you show it to the user is another one. I have been working with W3C, I think was 12 years ago. I don't know how many of you know about Web Accessibility Guidelines, for example. It's something. Do you know about
Web Accessibility? Yeah, some, yep.
Okay.
Some.
Just a few, okay. We did it wrong, okay. They have something like, I think the first version was 12, 15 years ago. Yeah. And we were talking about we should design webs for everybody independently of the device, the capabilities of the user that is using it. It could be the mobile browser, it can be this wide screen, it could be the TV. We don't know which is the device that is going to be next one, the next big device. Maybe it's television, and then another huge number of frameworks will appear. I think it was 7 years ago we wrote the mobile web best practices, and this was this discussion. Should we focus first on mobile? No, just focus on doing best practice, creating your web for everybody, and adapt. Now we are talking 7 years later about responsive web design, and it was something that already was in the spec in the first time. So something we are doing wrong. Just slow, but let's see if it arrives.
It takes time to adopt a new technology. And on this note, I also I've noticed how frameworks sometimes they're given birth, they rise, and then they die after a while. They say that in the JavaScript space it takes around 12 to 18 months for a framework to be popular, and then the popularity fades out. What do you guys think about that? Ralph, I would like to start with you.
jQuery has been popular, it hasn't died, so I don't know what you're talking about. I think you can tell if a framework's going to die by how it's maintained, right? If you look at jQuery, you see lots of activity that's happening. You see a lot of releases. You see a lot of new things that are being added to it. So you know that the popularity of that framework is just going to continue to either rise or at least stay at that level. When you start seeing a framework that takes a lot longer to release, or there's nothing really new coming out, and they're really stagnating, the popularity is going to go down because people want those new features, and they want to be those bugs to be fixed and maintained. So a lot of it has to do with maintainability, I think, and the activity around the project. And if it doesn't have it, the popularity is going to decrease pretty quickly.
So yeah, that's probably the key of success for a framework, is to innovate itself, to bring new features so that user can keep on using, can keep adding and experimenting with new things. Let's talk about Sencha in this case, because Sencha has recently released a new version, Sencha Touch 2.1.
Yep, so we just released, I think there's a blog post on our website yesterday which announced full support for BlackBerry 10. And this adds a proper BlackBerry 10 theme to make it more consistent with that particular platform. And we've added a specific component, the crosscut component, to aid in navigation within applications on that particular platform. So that's available for download from today on our website. But I think in terms of the framework itself, it has a full set of tools around it. So you've got, for instance, a front-end drag-and-drop UI builder if you want to perhaps not necessarily code the whole application yourself. There's also an Eclipse plugin, so if you want full code completion, sort of IntelliSense type support, we have that capability as well to make it, make it easier.
Thanks. Jose, yours, when was it created and how it's innovating itself?
Actually, Lungo is our framework for ourselves for TapCuo. We are creating our solutions for the customers using Lungo. What we have done is just release it as open source and do a license for the community and the people. So we keep innovating because we need it to do new products and new solutions. So I think that's the challenge point, is to keep it working.
Yeah, thanks. And Tim, regarding your framework, it used to be like a one-man show where you were releasing new features and the new update to the framework every now and then. Now community is contributing as well. There is a lot of pull requests. So how are you innovating with the framework?
Just saying no.
Yeah, so saying no a lot. I think a lot of stuff from popularity comes around. I think it's been mentioned around activity. Right? I think part of it is making sure that the framework is evolving, or it's continuing to try to solve problems, or continuing to better itself. And I think a lot of that popularity, and whether or not something dies or not, and how you deal and keep maintaining change, is actual people understanding that there's others behind it that care about it. And they actually want to see it be successful, and they're genuine, and they want to actually make a difference and make it better, and that they're open to suggestions and change and making things better. Obviously, if you've got a framework and it says this is what we're trying to accomplish, trying to take suggestions, well, you need to take it off in this direction, you need to take on the world and do all these other things, you still have to maintain, again, those kind of strict borders of what you're trying to accomplish. But I think being able to be open to change, to contributions, to being able to be open with your roadmap and what you're trying to accomplish and what you're working ahead, so that you give people the opportunity to be part of it, right? I think there's a great sense of accomplishment when you can be part of that framework and be part of that community and make it better. And you start to see that come across with either just bug reports, just for the love of God, just file a bug, that would be great, right? Those are the types of things where you can tell, and I know I was at a jQuery conference a while back, and it's like, please, someone just file a bug, right? I mean, just anything you can do to help us, and you can see how there's genuine care and support behind it, that helps move it forward, and that there's a dialogue and conversation. I think sometimes where you see some of these different frameworks fail is because it's, well, I'm better than so-and-so, and I'm the next best thing, and I'm the golden-haired child, and look at me, I do really cool stuff. And it gets to a point of where there starts to be more of a community kind of, wait a second, you know, why aren't you listening? Listening, this is my problem. And I think that's where you see some of the successful frameworks show and shine through, that they actually listen and care.
Okay, thank you. So let's talk about UI guidelines, because when you are on mobile platforms, every platform is different, and everyone developing for that platform would like to see the look and feel for that specific OS rather than a generic look and feel. I would like to start with Ralph. Let's talk about jQuery Mobile, the BlackBerry 10 theme that you've got.
Sure. The BlackBerry 10 theme was developed by Jason Scott, who's a BlackBerry employee, and you know, it's a great little theme. So jQuery Mobile is built upon the jQuery UI framework, which is themable, and there's a theme roller. If you go to jQueryMobile.com, you can build your own theme. You can build up to 26 color swatches. It's great. You know, you can customize everything that you want. So companies like BlackBerry have developed like what we're calling third-party themes that you can plug into your application and make jQuery Mobile look exactly like a BlackBerry 10 app, which is great, you know. So the theme actually comes with extra controls that extend jQuery. So you get an action bar, just like BlackBerry 10. You get a grid control. There's other controls that come that, you know, BBUI is also providing that allow you to have the look and feel of BlackBerry 10. You know, other companies are also doing the same thing. Microsoft provides what they called a Metro theme before they changed the name Metro. There's community members that have built iOS-looking themes. There are third-party themes where you can take jQuery Mobile and make it look like whatever platform you're going on. So you can take the same code and, with a little bit of adjustment, deploy it on multiple platforms just by changing the theme.
Jose, what's your approach in tailoring a framework for a platform?
Actually, we had this discussion when we create our framework about what should we do, just create things for each platform or let the developers the freedom to do that. The question was, okay, there are a lot of good designers outside that would like to customize applications, create nice applications. Then you have a new platform like Windows Phone or BlackBerry, and they say, okay, no, it has to look like this. It doesn't mind your design, it has to look like this. No? The web gives you the freedom to customize and create new UIs and new interaction modes. So don't tie to the platform in that sense. That's our perspective. And on the other side, when you use, for example, Foursquare application, I use it on Android. Okay, it looks some way. Then I take an iPhone and it looks different. Then I take, for example, Windows Phone and it's completely different. It's Metro theme or something like that. So it's not consistent. All the user experience in all the platform and devices. So our approach is, if you create an app, it's your image, is how you show yourself to the others. So it's your way. Don't let the platform to type you this kind of things. But you can do it, of course, it's CSS. Create a theme and it is.
Thanks. Daniel, Sencha Touch, for example, uses themes, and you guys have a BlackBerry 10 theme as well?
Yes, we actually work very closely with BlackBerry, and another recent example is working closely with Microsoft on Windows Phone 8, but obviously you don't care about that, you're all using BlackBerries here, of course. Yeah, so like Rolf, you can use style sheets for your particular platform, and we do have a BlackBerry 10 specific theme to make it more look specific for that platform. We do have a Windows Phone 8 theme, we have an iOS type theme, and these themes can be further customized if you want to perhaps change the color scheme slightly. It's just a case of altering the CSS. We do have a Sencha marketplace where further themes have been created by community members, and these have been published on the website and can be downloaded and used with the framework.
Do you guys have an Android theme?
Not at the moment. I think there's one in the works.
Is there actually a theme for Android? I was just thinking about it as you were saying that. Like, is there?
What is the end?
Yeah, what is
the
there an
Android?
I don't even think there is.
Even for native applications, they have different look and feel for everything.
I don't know.
Yeah, some applications have made the decision of having their own look and feel, so they look consistent across platform. But sometimes it's good that the user doesn't feel lost when he's using an application. He knows it's in the system, he knows how to use the system because he uses the core applications every day, and it's quite comfortable for the user to feel like home, you know, when you are in an application and you know what you're doing. Tim, probably this question doesn't apply too much to you because your framework is tailored for BlackBerry.
So you make the God easy for that one. But at the end of the day, it's supporting BlackBerry 5, 6, 7, Playbook, and BlackBerry 10. And if you take a look at all those different devices, they are vastly different in what they look like across them. So it's a similar problem, but a little more contained. So I mean, everything's very much targeted on there. And I mean, the question that we get a lot is, well, why are you, doing your own little framework, but then also, working with Jason and contributing into jQuery Mobile and working with Sencha to be able to create the different things that we're doing there with that framework again, it comes back down to this choice, right? We know that there's a large amount of people both using, these frameworks out there, and we want to make sure that they look great. Each one has their certain frameworks, and the example that Ralph gave about the themable, it has to follow a pattern in order to be able to make it be that same pattern across the different operating systems. So Jason and I work together all the time on, all right, now how do you make it work with the CS? How are you doing your touch events? How are you doing all these things? So we use BBY as an experimentation area for playing around with some of the different UI aspects. It's a very niche toolkit specific to just our platform. So we get a lot of interesting creative freedom to try things out there, see how they're going to work. And Jason and I collaborate a lot on those things. I know we've been using both BBY as kind of a reference point too for the Sencha stuff, saying, look, here's some of the sizing and measurements and different things that you can do. Please steal the CSS. Please steal whatever you want out of this stuff and reuse it. So I mean, for this different stuff in the BBY framework, it's very much just a different set of CSS for the different set of controls, reusing as much as you can across the different controls. Don't really use CSS media queries really quite yet for doing some of these things, because then there's some scenarios where some controls look exactly the same between some of them, but then they're slightly different in other ones. And do you load multiple different CSS files for these things? So there's some concessions we make for some simplicity in there, but a lot of times it's just forks of code styling things different inside the toolkit.
Okay, thanks. So last question. I've got a bunch of money. I want to throw it at you. Sell me your framework in 1 minute. So why would I buy your framework? Why would I use it? I will start with Jose.
Oh. We are the last new kid in the market, so let's try to do it as fast as possible. Why using Lungo? I think the main reason is you are going to write just efficient apps ready for HTML5 and CSS3 devices. You are going to learn a lot about what's mobile market and how to create applications. And if you are focused on design and you are focused on making your app different and fast for the device, I think Lungo is the right decision for that.
Okay, thanks. Daniel?
Yeah, so I mean, as I mentioned previously, we've got the core frameworks, we've got the tools around that, so the UI builder, we're making a theme builder, and we've got the Eclipse plugin as well, which adds value to the framework. And we're constantly making improvements to the framework itself in terms of new components, performance improvements, supporting all the new platforms that become available. So those, I think, are the main benefits, plus as well you've got a proper commercial company to contact if you have any questions or need any assistance with your project.
Okay, thank you. Ralph?
Well, jQuery Mobile's free, so you don't have to throw your money at it.
I still want to pay for it, so sell it to me.
Yeah, great. There's a donation button. Let's see. So jQuery Mobile is actually very popular. There's community support for it. You're programming in, if you're a web developer, you're programming, you already know how jQuery Mobile is going to work. You're just going to use the similar semantic HTML that you've already known with a little extra data attributes added along. You're going to know that your work that you're doing is cross-platform, cross-browser. It's going to work across all the different devices, and if it doesn't yet on that new device, we're gonna get to it in an upcoming release.
Thank you, Ralph. Tim?
So if you're building a BlackBerry specific application that needs to run across multiple different BlackBerry devices and is absolutely tweaked specifically for the BlackBerry devices for performance, then I think BBY is an interesting choice. It's just UI only. It's not other different pieces. And if you're looking for reasons to give me money, I love Batman, and I'll sell you a unicorn.
Okay, I'll try to buy you some Batman-related things.
Done.
Okay.
How much is the unicorn?
We'll talk.
Okay.
Yeah, let's open it to questions quickly. I'll start from this side. Yes.
Here's a microphone coming around too. So.
Hello. I've been developing with Sencha Touch, and I was used to package my application with Cordova. And in fact, Sencha Touch has its own packaging solution for Android and iOS, not yet for BlackBerry. I've got many performance improvements. So does the other plans to make a packaging solution also, or do you recommend to use Cordova? Yes.
Yep. Daniel.
Yeah, so we do have our own mobile packager. At the moment, it only supports, as you pointed out, iOS and Android. The reason we have our own packager is just so that we have one that can be supported by us. We have plenty of customers that do use PhoneGap for their packaging, and there's plenty of apps in the App Store that have wrapped their Sencha Touch application using PhoneGap. And you've got a choice as to which one to use. We are constantly making improvements to the packager, so more platforms should become available at some point soon. You can come and chat to me later on, or chat to one of the developers at the booth downstairs. They might know more about that than I do right now.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. Last question, because we have to close it off. Thanks.
In general, what do you think about Dojo Mobile toolkit or framework?
Ooh, burning questions for you guys. Who wants to answer that quickly? Any take?
I don't have any experience with Dojo Mobile, so I can't really speak intelligently for it. So I'm out.
Yeah, me neither. Just use Sencha. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you very much, guys, for attending, and hopefully we'll see you around with other sessions as well. Just check the schedule. Don't forget to fill the survey, and I'm not sure what other housekeeping things I'm forgetting. Oh, and thank you for attending BlackBerry Jam Europe. Thank you.